November 4th, 1922. Howard Carter and his crew find the entrance to Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb, also called his sarcophagusy. Welcome to the Revisionists. I'm Boo Ryan Flynn.
I'm Zach. Too late. Scare boy.
And joining us is I'm gonna recycle the pun. Katie Bowman. Katie Bowman.
Thank you
just
for
to get a
having
clean
me.
read. Thank you for being here. It's too late in a number of ways, given that it is 5 days after Halloween by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
But what's scarier than Thanksgiving? Ooh.
It's
you have to see your relatives. That is getting genuinely scarier. You know,
honestly.
Halloween, for all the spooky season shit it's like all we do is we watch fun horror movies, a good genre of movie, in my opinion. And then we end the whole month. We put up decorations that everybody likes. And then we end the whole month by doing nice things for children we don't know. It's a very nice
as hell.
Actually, it's kind of nicer than Christmas, where we only do nice things for children we do know.
Yeah. And it's very Christmas is capitalist as fuck. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel Halloween can get away with being a little more homespun than Christmas a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, you can make a costume out of anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a really expensive one,
condom.
Yeah. I just saw a guy put a condom on his head, and then he blew into it through his nose, and it shot up on top of his head, and he was like, "They said I could be anything, so I want to be a unicorn." And I was like, "What? A DIY unicorn costume?" There you go. That's like 2 cents.
That's also a unicorn in the sense of a man in Denver who uses a condom in some way.
That's true. Statistically, it's not going well for the people that are out there fucking right now with random people.
There is super gonorrhea. I don't.
Oh, is there a gonorrhea epidemic in Denver?
Hey, gonorrhea. Yes. Yeah, it's bad. People, some guy had to have a slow drip of antibiotics that he couldn't be taken off of because he had full gonorrhea resistance.
Yeah, that's
Is that like a superpower, like a Spider-Man villain? The worst
X-Man.
Spider-Man.
I have gonorrhea that won't go away.
Sorry, Spider-Man, your tricks won't work on me.
There needs to be more than
gonorrhea resistance.
Yeah, when I was doing it, I remember
most people don't know. Most people don't know that Spider-Man's webs have a lot of gonorrhea.
That's why they'll get you. But yeah, true, and sadly syphilis, but that's more with people that do anal.
Yep.
So
yeah, I'll preface this by saying I don't have syphilis, but I did a blood. I had a false positive for syphilis.
It happens.
Because I have some autoimmune things going on.
Yeah, totally. Autoimmune shows a lot of shit. It sucks.
But I gave blood for Children's Hospital, and then they sent me a letter being like, "Hey, you tested posi for Sif," and they're just. And they're like, we can still use the blood because we're pretty sure it's negative.
You have a couple, you have those syphilis bagels in the morning, and suddenly you have a false positive.
Yeah, I remember that Seinfeld.
Dude, it happens autoimmune stuff, because I have autoimmune stuff too. And so I didn't know this, but if you say you also have the herpes virus, that's autoimmune. And so if you have an outbreak of rheumatoid arthritis, herpes virus outbreak, or if you're having a HPV outbreak, A lot of those can trigger a rapid HIV test to go off too.
And
that's terrifying.
I believe,
oh my God.
I believe mono is one of those diseases that you never actually leave. Like it's always in your body. I technically, I guess, still have mono because I
had mono. My mom thought I was doing heroin, but it was mono.
I had some weird fever dreams on mono. They were about big mosquitoes. I was watching the movie Michael Clayton starring George Clooney. And,
oh my God.
That wasn't part of the fever dream. That was
I passed out in my college class. My mom came and got me, and I was home by the end of the night trying to watch a movie, and I was just having fever dreams while Michael Clayton was playing.
That is
so that's my mono story. It's actually maybe the most sick I've ever been.
Yeah.
Mono is pretty weird. You like don't know what's going on. You're like, why am I so tired?
Yeah, I passed out in class and
like you're passing out. Like but isn't it like your heart can explode or something if you don't rest?
That's
a little dramatic.
Yeah, I think that might be like I don't know, like I don't know about explode, but sure.
It explodes in your chest.
Yeah, there's just Wile E. Coyote hooked up to your heart with one of the TNT plungers.
Yeah.
Is this a Halloween episode? What is going on?
Yeah, this is a late Halloween episode.
This is like this is spooky stuff, like this is.
I mean, your heart exploding is scary and can happen.
And look, STIs, STDs, they're all
be safe, kids. Kids don't listen to this, I'm sure. But if you're a kid and you're listening to this, protection.
Yeah, ask your parent or guardian about safe sex,
or look it up online. You know what I mean?
Like both to learn and both to make your parent or guardian very uncomfortable.
Or just go to a Planned Parenthood.
Find a reputable site, and don't go on Reddit, but like go on like a site that has like .gov or something on the bottom, and it's fine. Honestly, in a lot of cases, it's going to be better than your parents because who knows? Maybe they're fucking.
Oh my God, my mom was terrible.
Yeah, they might be fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
My mom.
Another spooky Halloween thing. Remember the movie Carrie? Your mom might be fucking insane.
Oh my God, I just watched Carrie again. And I read the book again. Oh, I hadn't read the book, but so good. So fucking crazy. It's so fucking crazy.
Yeah, so don't trust your mom.
Trust your mom. Don't trust your mom. And also that director, is he like on a list somewhere?
He's huge. Yeah. God, I'm blanking on his name.
De Palma?
He you watch Carrie?
Yeah, it is De Palma.
Honestly,
it's Brian De Palma.
I was listening to Carrie on audio and I was like, this is getting me revved up. I could fuck right now in certain parts of the book. And then only because they talk about when she burns. I have been working this on stage. I was like, when she burns it down, I get down. But because you're so happy for her. You're like, please fucking kill all these evil people. If you ever got bullied like that fucking part of that book. And then I watched the movie and I was like, oh, it's not just me. Okay. So this fucking director made it the most weirdly sexual movie you've ever seen, where you're like, why is this locker room scene 10 minutes of just boobies and bushes?
That's capturing the spirit of all Stephen King works.
I fucking love Stephen King. Okay.
Yep. Stephen King. I love Stephen King. Stephen King sex scenes, very uncomfortable.
They are, and I literally am in the middle of the stand right now.
It is his best book, in my opinion. I haven't read all of them, but of the ones I've read. And also that sex scene is the worst. The worst.
With sexual stuff or
the sex scene near the end of it, if you know, you know.
Dude, I just got through the one where Larry and Rita have sex, and I was like, oh, he is gonna have this like Harold and Maude situation go down. Like,
even in Pet Sematary, there's like a weird hand job, and it's like,
oh yeah,
this doesn't need to be
Pet Sematary is very bizarre. And also, if you listen to the audiobook of it, Michael C. Hall reads it. Michael C. Hall reads it, and it's like he's just really good at it. He's really
you
good
should read, if you haven't heard read or listened to it, the Steven Weber.
My favorite. That is my favorite.
The Steven Weber audiobook is exceptional.
It's fucking insane. I'm like such an it head now. I literally also have a joke about it because
yeah, I think Steven Weber, his narration of it is one of the best audiobooks readings I've ever heard, ever, straight up. He's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. I thought it was like so amazing. It keeps you the entire time. You're just like, oh my God. And I just think Stephen King is like real about shit, and like people get weirded out because everyone had a different childhood. But like I grew up in a school where people were like, my friends were like having sex in middle school, like when people I knew were having sex in middle school, and I was like, are you okay? Like, and I was like full braces. I had like a retainer like glued in my mouth, and I was like, I can't imagine stuck in a dick right now, you know. But like some people were.
Yeah, you know, bad stuff.
This is going to be a slightly uncomfortable transition to our topic for this episode.
Sorry. Okay.
No, for the second of our Halloween Spooktaculars, we're going to be talking about a real piece of shit.
Yes.
Gilles de Rais and
Gilles de Rais, Guy de Rais. I've heard it. I heard Gilles de Rais a lot. So
I was like, is this like Gilda Radner? But like,
when I look at it as an American, I think Giles, like the Buffy character, but it's not pronounced like that for sure.
Hey, go! Oh, I love Giles. Okay, wait. Hey, do not knock this over. Come on, out. Sorry, guys.
Oh, we got a doggy.
He just finished that bone in like 2 seconds. I got nothing now. So we'll have to get through this. Okay, don't worry, he just went away for a second.
No, I'm just
going. You know.
So Zach, you're gonna do the actual history.
That's correct. Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna.
And I'm ready to start. Yep.
Sorry, I just want to lead into that with a bit of a content warning.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and actually.
Okay. Cool.
During like the moments where I talk about that part of it, I'm gonna be like, if you want to skip forward, and I'm gonna keep it very brief. Like, you know, the details are.
There's no need to
from the 1400s, and like nobody, like they're not in depth. Like they came out later, and you know, I'll just say, like, if you don't want to listen to this part, skip forward 15 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm not saying that now. I'm going to say that later.
Yes.
But yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
There's some nasty stuff.
Before we start, one sec. Is it okay if I just want to hear how it sounds? Gilles de Rais.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Gilles de Rais, like something like it almost sounds like the name Jill, like the feminine name Jill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he does kind of get it in there, like Gilles de Rais.
So
okay, come here, you.
That is based on what I read and listened to. That's what I'm going with.
Cool.
Not that I need to give this guy proper, respect. Gilles de Rais was born sort of around 1405. He was born into an extremely privileged family. Both of his parents came from money. This story involves a lot of French politics from the 1400s, and I am gonna gloss over some of them. There's wars, there's lines of heritage, all that shit. I'm going to make it as simple as possible
mm-hmm.
for the sake of ease. That is not why people remember this man.
No, it is
not. But he was very privileged. Couple different noble houses, parents, second cousins, married in a, sort of one of those, we got to combine our power sort of relationships. He was born apparently in a place called, quote, the Black Tower.
Cool. Not ominous.
That is...
He had a brother, younger brother, somewhere between 3 and 10 years younger. The records aren't great from this time, obviously. But he did have a younger brother. So when he's about 10, maybe roughly, again, we don't know his exact year of birth, his dad dies. As far as I can tell, he was gored by a boar during a hunt, like Stannis Baratheon style. His mom, what happened to her is unclear. She just kind of disappears from the records, but it's generally presumed she died at roughly a similar time, maybe giving birth to the younger brother, but we don't really know. But regardless, he's an orphan by relatively early childhood, by the age of 10 or 12 or something like that. He's raised by his maternal grandfather, John de Crayon. And it's pronounced like crayon as far as I can tell. Just like, yeah.
La bon temps roulé.
So Jean de Crayon, bit of an asshole. But while he is growing up, France and Britain are at war because that was just how things were for like 400 years. And
basically up until it wasn't.
Yeah. So for a long time, that's just how things were. This was during the period of time where they were always at war. And quote, Mad Charles VI is the king of France when he's a young child. Henry V coming up over there in England. The Battle of Agincourt happens in 1415. This is you might remember this battle from Henry V from Shakespeare. It's one where he gives the big St. Crispin's Day speech, unless I am misremembering that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. It's a big turning point. The English have a lot more control over the French after this point. In fact, Henry sort of becomes the kind of king of France, and the lineage of Charles VI is severed. And this precedes a number of years of revolution, infighting. There are people who are dedicated to restoring France to its former crown. Charles has a son who is, Henry VII, or Charles VII, who is, theoretically entitled to the throne, and a lot of people are dedicated to his cause. They want to reclaim France for the French, but technically England has a hold over France at this time. And this is all important because it's a big part of his military history, even though it happened while he was too young to actually participate in the military battles. In the meantime, Jill is being raised by Jean de Crayon. Most accounts, this guy is an asshole. He is selfish. He's self-serving. He, does it within like sort of normal CEO modern day reason.
Yes.
Jill becomes his sole heir after his actual natural born son dies at the Battle of Agincourt. But he is willing to steal, rob, kidnap, ransom if it serves his interests, and if he can get away with it in the court of public law, which is relatively lenient at this time in France because it's a time of great conflict. And, nobles are more or less kind of allowed to do these things as long as they don't get too egregious. So
fortunately, everything has changed in that regard.
Yeah. So this is what he does, and this is, I suppose, uh, the way he teaches Gilles de Rais, but I think there's, this is nature versus nurture shit. We're not going to talk about that right now. He does get a rounded education, young Jill. He is, that's normal for the time for great, people born into wealth and privilege. He gets a lot of education and all of these things, but a great deal of that is military education. That's also normal at the time. He's taught how to fight, how to kill, how to engage in combat. He's led into a wedding with his fourth cousin to consolidate power. The church initially has a problem with this. Eventually it's resolved. In the great scale of scandals in this man's life, this one is minor.
It does not even register.
Yeah. So
a lot of it was like, what?
Anyways, eventually the church does concede to bless the wedding. How close they are is ambiguous. I would say they probably weren't very. They had one child 9 years after the marriage, and it seems like they mostly lived apart based on what we can tell. So Charles VII, the sort of pledgling king of France, if he can restore the bloodline from his father, attempts to regain control of France. This goes initially quite poorly. But Jill is, in fact, involved in some of the early disputes in this revolution to reclaim France, and involved in several battles, even kind of a hero in a number of them. There's one where he climbs the battlements before anybody else. He leads troops frequently. He is brought on as an advisor to the king. This is maybe in part due to his, illustrious heritage and the fact that he is a noble by birth. But he is something of a war hero during this period in history where France is trying to reclaim a little bit of their independence.
And he is like, just to give a little bit of extra context, like he's up in the mix with like Joan of Arc.
Yeah, so like, that's what comes next.
Time. Oh, sorry.
Joan of Arc appears. I just want to say, like, based on everything I've heard, Joan of Arc is not a good military leader. She is kind of zealotous, and a lot of her attempts are without caution or thought. I think I don't place a great deal of regard in Joan of Arc as, I don't know, she's sort of a great rallying figure more so than someone who actually has any idea of how to militarily command anything.
Like she would get you in a bar fight.
Protester, like doing that.
Yeah, she doesn't know actually what the fuck she's doing most of the time on the battlefield. But regardless, she enters and is a big sort of mascot for the French campaign. She has a couple of successes that are, by luck or by pluck. She has successes. And she wants Charles to be king. and she's on the same side as Giles. There's even a story that she was brought in to meet Charles, and Charles pretended to be a common, like, advisor, and she recognized him immediately, even though he was not on the throne. Some sources say that Giles was the man who was pretending to be Charles in those situations, though that is not, we can't confirm that.
And I'm sure there is a decent chance that Charles had, of course, whatever European inbred royalty sort of face happens.
Yeah.
Look up any Habsburg and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Or see Midsummer.
Yes.
But there are...
Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't let me interrupt you. Keep going.
So there are actually occasions where Joan has sort of unruly and disruptive attacks that are like pretty poorly thought out, and Gilles de Rais comes in and helps save her from like these poorly thought out rushed attacks. Like sometimes even Charles is considering peace, and Joan is like, we cannot have peace, and goes rushing in full force. And
cool.
Yeah, she's a bit of a wild card.
She's like a J.K. Rowling. You're like, what?
Yeah. Eventually, a lot of French nobility actually ostracize her, but Gilles de Rais seems to be sort of always fond of her, even near the end of her life when she is captured by the English. He goes to a town only a few miles away from where she is captured, and some people speculate it's because he was planning an attempt to save her. But if he was planning it, he never actually went through with it. It didn't happen. But that begins the next portion of his life, the post military career. Joan dies at some point around this time. She is killed. And he, a very rich man, he spends his fortune on a lot of frivolous shit, parties and extra castles and nonsense like that.
Funko Pops.
Yeah, just anything. He's got a lot of people that he hang around him that he just like pays dividends to, all this stuff. He's just throwing away money. His sort of father figure, Jean de Craon, actually begins to loathe him at this time for his spending, though John eventually does die. Obviously, he's an old man in 1400s France. He's not going to live super long. But Jean de Craon actually sort of intended to transplant his inheritance to his younger brother, who he thought was more steady-headed, and almost certainly was.
Given what's going to happen. After John dies, he starts selling multiple castles to afford these egregious debts and these servants and these parties and these other things he's doing. And he even turns to bigotry, kidnapping, and ransom. Now, as I said earlier, this is not strictly forbidden for lords. His grandfather, Jean de Craon, did all of this stuff. He was a brigand and a kidnapper and a ransomer. So this is a tumultuous time in France, and a lot of the misdeeds of the nobles just got people looking the other way. But Charles VII was trying to reinstate some kind of rule of law after a certain point, and he was trying to
decrease the amount that these things were just forgiven. He had a few cousins, a few servants, and other people like that. And probably roughly around this time, which was something like 1431 or 2, there was a number of reports of kids disappearing from areas where he had power, where he had castles, where he had influence, which were, a couple different areas. Mostly young boys. He continued to fall out of favor with French nobility over these years, seeming more erratic and hectic, a far fall from his days as kind of a war hero. And it seems as though he also started to get involved with alchemy and demon summoning, were things he became interested in, mostly because it seems, as far as his confession goes, his money was running out. And he was hoping that one of these things could solve his monetary problems. That alchemists could turn silver to gold, or he could summon a demon to, I don't know, make a deal to solve his woes. He actually employed a few alchemists. The first of which, as far as I can tell, told him he could turn a silver coin into a gold coin. They locked him in a room for a night to do this, and the alchemist got drunk and fell asleep.
What a scam. I'd love this. This is also the only phase of his life I approve of.
There is one guy, Francois Perlotti, who was actually sort of his, I guess you'd call him his Rasputin. It's a guy who stuck with him for a number of years, who claimed to be an alchemist, though he never proved any tangible results, obviously. But de Rais kept him on his sort of, payroll for quite a few years. Actually, up until he was caught. Spoiler alert. This guy was part of his team, and as far as I can tell from the histories, which are obviously incomplete, because these histories are always incomplete, I think this guy was just kind of like milking him for money. I also think he had an idea that this guy was up to really dark shit and looked the other way, so probably not a good guy.
Yeah, fuck him. Yeah.
Anyways, he was doing some of this, like, alchemist demon summoning shit, but primarily he was just having gluttonous parties. It seemed like he was just being a drunk and a hedonist. And on the other side, again, these kids kept disappearing from areas where he roamed. I'm gonna talk about that aspect after I talk about him being caught. So I'll mention that before I do. Anyways, he was getting poorer and poorer, spending his money frivolously. He attempted to seize by force a castle that he had previously sold off to pay some earlier debts. He actually ran up upon this guy, Jean Le Ferron, who was the brother of the new owner, who was the Duke of Brittany, on the road, and basically forced him to say, either give me this castle back or I am going to murder you. And the guy said, okay, I guess I'll give you the castle back. This guy was a priest, and he threatened him with torture. But even then, this guy was connected. You know what I mean? Like, his brother was a duke, and this was like a step too far. This guy, Gilles de Rais got away with a lot because he was connected with powerful people and came from a position of privilege. Now he's fucking with other powerful people. Yeah. And so this is about the time when they start taking measures against him. Initially, they imprison one of his guards. They impose a $50,000 franc fine against him, which would have broken his bank at the time. Yeah. And it was more than he can pay. And as he continues to act out, eventually they start acting more heavily on these reports of missing children, on all this weird rumors about this guy. And there's a full-on investigation. At the same time, King Charles VII is like, I want to cut down on lawlessness among my nobles. So that's also a factor in why, they're starting to sort of scrutinize him a little more. He got away with it in the lawless times where Britain and France were like, France was just like, who even runs this fucking country? Like, it's easier to get away with shit at that time. So they begin to look into the long-running rumors of missing children in the provinces. And pretty quickly, the evidence accrued against him. Evidence of his involvement with these missing children, and important at the time, but less important now, also heresy and demon summoning.
Cool. Legit dope, but
this is the part where I have to talk a little bit about some of the things he did.
Yes.
So I'm gonna give you guys press skip 15-30 seconds. I'll give you a second to find the button. Just very quickly, these were things that this guy did to these kids from poor people around where he lived. He dismembered them, he beheaded them, he broke their necks with a specific device he used for that purpose. He raped them before, after, and possibly during death. And he tortured them through cutting and stabbing. So that's a limited list of some of the stuff that he did to, honestly, quite a lot of children.
Yeah.
Really, it's insane.
Yeah. But I didn't want to spend too much time on that part of it. It is,
thank you.
A graphic.
Too much for you.
Anyways, so the investigation proved fruitful. There was a lot of evidence, or enough, to bring him to trial for his crimes. And by most accounts, it seems like at least a couple of his accomplices, his servants, his cousins, his alchemist buddy, con artists, turned on him. At least one, maybe more than one. We don't know who. But there were, heavy accounts of what they did in covering up these crimes, cleaning up bodies from castles they were about to sell, things like that.
Jesus.
He had two trials, in fact. One was a sort of religious trial, and one was a secular trial, held in 2 floors of the same building. And actually run by the same guy who, for some reason, got to run them both. I can't remember why. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's why we have separation of church and state. But also fuck this guy.
But he was initially extremely uncooperative by all accounts, even held in contempt of court. But as the charges and potential punishments accrued, he seemed to get a little bit more compliant. But again, even by the court records, he started getting angry and surly again in the days after that. but was threatened by torture by the Inquisition, not for his charges of murder so much as his charges of heresy.
Such a fucking stupid time.
Yeah. So when that threat of torture came around and he was brought around to be tortured, he was like, actually, I think I'll confess. And indeed confessed to all the murders. He confessed to them being not for any demon summoning or heresy or anything like that. He said he just wanted to do them. At the time, it actually confused the person questioning him. There was no conception of somebody like a serial killer at this time. Mm-hmm. But the guy who questioned him, according to the records, was like, I don't understand what you mean. Like, you just did this? But yeah.
I mean, there's also like, part of me is like, again, the thing of like the heresy being viewed as like almost worse or more like,
yeah.
But there's also the sense of like, yeah, how do you understand someone telling you, no, I just kind of did this?
Yeah.
Like,
the worst. They brought in his alchemist friend, a long Karn artist, to corroborate his story and actually to see if it was for demonic summoning purposes. And he was like, he brought me a few body parts exactly one time, and that's it. He didn't ever bring me anything else. And Gilles de Rais was like, when they brought him away from the Inquisition area, he was like literally in tears with this guy, being like, my friend, I'll see you again in the future of paradise. He was like, I know this is the last time I'll see you. Both of these people were executed.
Oh my god.
Anyways, on October 26, 1440, he was hung, and then his corpse was burned along with two of his servant accomplices. He requested to be executed first of the three, which was granted. His charge was the murder of 140 children or more.
Jesus.
Yep. So he was hung, then his corpse was cut loose and dropped into the fire. And that was the end of the story of the once war hero turned insane serial killer, Gilles de Rais.
Oh my god.
Fucking hell. Okay.
It's so crazy. Like,
it's bad. And I will say, as much as I'm just against snitching in general, there are times when you should tell someone that you suspect your friend or employer is doing the stuff that's actually
a safe one is if someone is abusing a child.
Yes.
Straight up, that's it. You tell somebody.
Really, what a time to be alive. Like,
yeah. Or if you think they're a fucking serial killer who's killing people for fun.
People are just like serial killers, and people are like, that's just what rich people do.
Yeah.
It feels so real, right? Because like also that's kind of how I feel like the whole time period of like gladiators and shit. It's just like rich people wanting to see people at their work. Like there's something there that's crazy. Also just being rich as fuck. Sorry.
No, you're good. Zach, thank you for doing the, I'm sure, not fun research on that. But Katie, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Right. Okay. So, wait, my computer just locked. Of course. I want you to know that I also always research just because I want to know what I'm getting, what the contrast need, what we need, what kind of concert do we need right now? So I was in this history, I was like, Gilles de Rais is like a pretty cool guy. Gilles de Rais was born in 1405.
I should say there are people who think he was framed.
Yeah. Okay. This is. Yeah. Who knows? Like, who fucking knows? It's so crazy.
They did. Yeah. CSI was not. Crime investigation techniques were, again, torture and threats of torture.
Yeah.
At this
it's
time.
So funny too, because
and if he fell out of political favor, like, it's less inconceivable than someone being framed nowadays to me, but I don't think he was framed.
Yeah, I don't think he was either. But it is crazy because this like repetitive cycle of like people just losing their brains that have too much power, then like receiving like damnation and like all their shit gets buried. It just keeps happening in history. Like we literally just had it again where, in America, we're taking down statues and people are like, that's history. And I'm like, no, we're making history because we're taking these statues down. Now these statues are going to get buried. And one day people will be like, what the fuck? White people are terrible. Okay. Anyway, so he was the first person to give us the short punk haircut with bangs and a bob. So thank you, Gilles de Rais. And his father actually survived the war that he was in. And so they hugged it out, and his dad was very present. And so Gilles was given his own castle where he could go designing medieval clothing and stuff. Because he was drafted to the war at the time. There's nothing he can do about it. And it was at the war where he saved Joan of Arc that she asked him to be her lover, but Gilles de Rais figured out that, but she asked him to be her lover, but he was like, oh, I'm actually into Charles. And she was like, me too. And then suddenly she died at battle. After the war was over, he traveled back to one of his many castles and decided to throw lots of balls, like all kinds of balls, where he could invite lots of young people and like all these young people would come and explore their genders and sexualities at a very young age in a safe space. Gil ends up spending a little too much money on these kids though, because people said he was kind of like an early day house mother. And he ended up he gave shelter to too many boys, and it was just a very archaic time. People were very judgy. They were like, where are our boys? Where are all our boys going? And the boys were like, we want to be here, Mom. But the boys were there, and so the town started whispering about it. And also at the same time, Gilles made some bold decisions, and he sold one of his castles. So his grandpapa took some stuff away and formed a secret society called a hitman duo. They were called the Two Devils. One night in 1414, the Two Devils barged into Gil's castle and were so angry by all the amazing culture that was going on that was way ahead of its time. They decided that they were going to burn down the castle because they were Satanists, and they burned it down with Gilles inside of it and all the art and clothing inside with him. It all burned away, and all that was left was one single feather standing still in ash, just like in that movie Nope. Okay, anyway, the town took this feather as a symbol from the higher power at the time, and old Gil was seen as a demonized example, even though he was actually a really nice guy. The end.
Spoiler alert also for Nope.
It's pretty early. It's pretty early in the movie.
This. Okay, I was like, we gotta make it like a happy story. How can we make
No, totally.
That's like the exact opposite.
How do I go as far opposite that as possible? Katie, thank you. Before we wrap up, listeners, I want to say you can always write us a letter at revisionistpodcast.com. Just click on the contact form at the top of the page. You can also find us on Instagram at revisionistpodcast. I think there's an underscore in there. It is very late at night, and I am a sleepy boy. But yeah, listeners, plugs. Katie, you are recording an album December 2nd at the Bug Theater.
Yes, I am. I'm so excited. I've been working on it all year. And I would love for you to be there. There's tickets on Brown Paper Bag. Mm-hmm. Please buy a ticket now and not later, because I really am trying to get a head count. I'm trying to sell it out. Hopefully I can. But I've had a lot of people be like, does it sell out? Or should we get one ahead? And I'm like, please, for my sanity, get one ahead of time. It'll be December 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Bug Theater in Denver. Yes. Yeah.
Zach, you co-host the Movie Trap, which has been on a bit of a pause, but listeners can still find a rich vein of back catalog material.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be back, sooner or later. But we have taken a hiatus due to everybody. We're old. All the people making these. You're old. I'm old. The people I make the movie trap with are old. We started these things in our early to mid 20s, and now we're not that way anymore. So, maybe we'll.
This is so much also my relationship with so many different things that I started in my 20s.
Totally. I feel that.
Listeners, never be in your 20s. It's not great. You think it's going to be really fun. It's not. I mean, at least wait until you're 27.
It's a load of shit.
You should either be in your early 20s forever or never be in them.
Yeah.
Pick one.
Maybe like for 2 years.
Yeah. If you pick the early 20s forever one, you'll probably. I'm sorry, you're not going to live very long.
And you're going to do a lot of white drugs, and you're going to talk about opening a lot of restaurants with a lot of people. As for me, listeners, I make tabletop role-playing games. You can find those on itch.io. Just search for Lamplighter Games. The latest one available is called Heartwood. It's an RPG where you play as trees, reforesting the post-human landscape. I have another one that will be published soon. That is just called Strike. It's a game of labor organizing. So yeah, keep an eye out for those. Judgment falls to me this episode, and I think these are very, very opposite approaches, almost more than usually happens on this show.
I know.
Because a lot of the time we're like, oh, a lot of the cool things that this cool person did are still true. And that's not the case here because of what Zach mentioned and the parts that some people may have skipped. And so I have very opposite approaches to pick from here. And I like the idea of hundreds of kids not dying. I'm a fan of that. At the same time, I feel something of a pang of conscience of just being No, it's okay.
Exonerated.
So I think I'm going to go. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go with the real history with my vote, but I also understand, listeners, voting's open for you. This is a hard one for me.
No, I kind of feel like going with the real history is like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
For sure.
I want to live in the world of the alternate history.
Right, don't we all?
But you don't want to exonerate this guy.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
No, we want him to die a lot. I wish they burned him a little bit and then hung him, right? Like, you want to get a little more in there on this guy.
It was like,
it sucks.
I'm not a fan of the death penalty, but hey, if you torture 140 kids to death.
I know. That's my line. It has to be that line.
That's your.
I agree. Yeah. There's like. There's like.
I think murdering any kid.
There's certain Nazis who died very painfully, and I'm like, good. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, that is karma working itself out.
We will do an episode one day, sort of going against our promise of like never talking about the Holocaust on this show, because it's a comedy show about alternate history, and there's enough bullshit people make up.
Oh my god!
But there is one of the American executioners of people of Nazi war criminals.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, was a guy who lied on his resume and said he'd done a lot of executions, and he was just like fucked up a bunch of Nazi executions.
That guy's hilarious.
That guy owns.
So fucking funny. That should be a horror film. Or like
it should be a comedy.
It's not even like a horror film.
Feel fucking good movie of the year.
That's like a turnaround. Like, I feel like that's like a Last House on the Left turnaround. But like, yeah, like you're just like, all right, let's see these parents kick some ass.
I think that guy sucked in like other aspects of his life, but that part is hilarious.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, he's like, it's like a Ken Bone situation.
I think we'll end on that. The classic Ken Bone situation. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Glad I could at least lighten it up.
Yeah, totally. That was always going to be the challenge with this guy.
It was a hard one. I was like, okay, you can't go.
I mean, like, a lot of it was the history of French,
I was like, he already is at like, you know how like some of the history is not that crazy. Like the last one I did, I don't think the history was like, it was like logical thinking people doing. Yeah. And like, I was like, man, this guy's like at a 12 out of a 10. He's just like done everything you could have. And like how bad can it be? How horrific can it be? Like, like we don't need to make it scarier.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Zach, thank you as always.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
For everyone here at The Revisionists, happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble, gobble. That's my turkey ham.
Your
turkeys
classic
are actually terrifying.
Classic Thanksgiving icon, Gilles de Rais.
What is Thanksgiving about if not murder?
No.
That's a good way to get it.
Yeah, have a good time. November 4th, 1960. Jane Goodall observes chimpanzees in Tanzania creating and using tools. The first recorded observation of non-human animals sharing a pirated Adobe Creative Cloud key. There we go. November 4th, 1970. Salvador Allende becomes the first Marxist elected president in Latin America, leading the CIA to redacted military coup, redacted shot in the head.
Weird choice of the redacteds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I it's just how it came to me. I would receive the information.